Okay, welcome, folks. So it's an exciting day here. It's the first day of sharing material development methods. Just again, we're just in a lab of the school of our dreams. So in this fictional scenario, you could be teaching to whatever type of group that you have. So as you present the materials that you have, if you could just let us know basically what it is, and you're not trying to teach it to us. You're not really field testing it. You're sharing it with a group of colleagues. And so you're going to show it to us and you're going to tell us what's your target group that you're teaching. Are you teaching preschoolers? Are you teaching at college? Is it a community class? And in this scenario, uh, what is their language level already? Are you teaching an intermediate group? Are you teaching, is this for a group of children who fully speak the language already? And we could live that dream and we can make that dream a reality. So just let us know so that we know how to look at the thing. And you're also just going to have to pretend that we know all the languages y'all are talking about. And then when you provide feedback, uh, whoever goes first, just say something genuine and positive, and nice and complimentary about what you just saw and experienced. And then we'll move into just ideas. We're not trying to make it better, but we're just saying, oh, you know what, maybe you could do this, maybe you could do that. And as far as incorporating feedback, um, try and resist an urge to, sometimes we might feel a little defensive because we just made something. And sometimes it feels like, look at this thing I just made. And then people start kind of criticizing it, and then you might feel bad. And so try not to feel bad, but also try to make sure that you understand the things that we're saying are just suggestions. So you can feel free to say, oh yeah. And you don't have to respond to every single thing that people say, but it's a collaborative, cooperative environment. And I'm excited to see what you folks have to share. So try and go for just look at the time and try and go for about 10 minutes. And once you see that you've gone 9 minutes, start getting into wrap up mode. I've seen lots of people make speeches and they're supposed to go for 10 minutes and they're 15 minutes in and then they say, I'll keep this short. So try to avoid that. I love listening to people, but we got to make sure everybody gets a turn. And then we'll just take a few minutes to just sort of talk about your idea that you're sharing with us. Okay, gach an san, it ha.
Gonna teach. I'm gonna share my screen, and part of it is I developed this, took all of Hune's wonderful images because I'm a beginner in the Tlingit language. And so this lesson is, I mean, it's for me as an adult learner, but wondering whether or not this would work for beginning adults who are trying to commit to memory, new vocabulary, and sentence structure within the Nora Dowenhauer Beginning Tlingit book. But then I also took Hune's book. So I took all the vocabulary and sentence frames from the two, because as a language learner, I really want to be ready for intermediate Tlingit next year. So I thought, okay. So my question is, I'm a music teacher. So is this method really just because I gravitate toward music? I mean, in 8th grade, I can still remember the one thing from French. Allo, allo, quieta la pared, quis ici, Lori, attendez s'il vous plaît. You know, I can still remember that from 40 more years ago. So Chinkasi and I are using this with kids to like look at, since the Tlingit language is a tonal language, could I create a melody from the language? And the other question I'm curious about, is it because I've organized it to fit a repetitive melody? Is that why I'm committing it to memory more easily? Because now I can sing the whole chapter in my head as I'm traveling. But is it because I organized it like by these different distances, right? So I tried to look at what might be right in my hand, for the dasa, dasaya. And then for dasahe, I looked at things that might be within my space, but further away from my hand. And then I organized, dasawe, a little further out over there. And then dasaya, way over there. So anyway, those are the things. I think those are the things that I was curious. So, and then what I'm trying to do is put in the notes, and I got this from Robbie Littlefield, is like putting the English translation down below, but then the goal is that I can hit present and not look at anything to see if I can do it. And then the blanks I snap on to remind me that that's where the word goes. So like I'm learning so it would be dasaya, dasaya, aya, dasahe, ahe, dasawe, awe, dasaya, aya, gusa, yada, heda, weda, yuda. And I'll just do the one of the close ones here. It says dasaya, tasaya, yuka ut aya, ka king ka wood kis kejin aya, sate sik aya, shaki ut aya, shayet shawat dak saknain aya, gut dana, dasehe, hit ahe, nadak ahe, na ut ahe, kaugan ahe, kugena, una, tia, tena ahe, wushyaye jaji, and so on and so on. And just going through all four. And then what I'm finding is like, anyway, enough of my chatting about it. I was just curious what your thoughts. I know when I talked to Jinky CE about it, it's like, wow, because I first got onto this when I was working with Hans Chester, and I said, oh, we could just use music. And he said, well, when we sing Tlingit music, the melody line doesn't match the tone, so you're not really teaching the language through music. So the hope is by building the music from the language, then now I can go away and go, dasoe, shayet, shawat, so that the music's in my head to tell me where the tones and the long vowel sounds are. So, yeah, I guess the question is, I wanted to introduce this verse because I've done this for chapter 1, combining both Hune's and the Nora Dowenhauer book. And then I did the second chapter, but I was like, wow, maybe I could do this almost like the traveling minstrels or the African griots, or, like if I can sing a whole chapter, then the memory part is gone and I can start, focusing on the other things. So, yeah, gonna teach for your time.
Sheesh, who would like to give the first response?
I really enjoy how interactive your plan is because I really enjoy music as well. But there was, I just really, really enjoyed it and how you put together a PowerPoint with the images and then how you shared your method of putting it on full screen. That way you wouldn't have any help from English. For translations, I really enjoyed that as well. How
Fabulous.
I really enjoyed how you drew on your strengths with music and you applied that to the language, and it sounded so beautiful and it was very impressive. How
Hey, Lori, what was the age or grade that you're aiming this at? Was it I might have missed that totally.
It's really meant for adult learners. You know, it's the vocabulary from the Nora Dowenhauer and Hune's beginning Tlingit workbook, and seeing whether we can help adults get over that hump of memorizing, because as we get older, our memories are not, you know, so taking that brain science, if we can only hold 7 things in our short-term memory, but a song is considered one chunk. So it's like, okay, how can I help adult learners like me? I still use this approach with kids, but it would be different content.
Love it. Yeah, no, I think it's fantastic. And I'm a big fan of using music to sort of drive home ideas. I still use it to memorize things. So exactly what you're saying. I think this is going to be really effective. Great. I totally just missed that at the beginning then. Sheesh.
No, the big thing is that it's not a Tlingit song, right? Like when I talk to Jinkasi, this is a tool to learn the language. So it doesn't sound, it's not supposed to sound like a Tlingit song at all. It's just to teach the tones. So I think that's the hardest part, because when I first sang something like that to Jinkasi, she's like, that, and Ed Littlefield, they're like, that's not a Tlingit song. And I go, no, it's never supposed to be. Like, it's a total pedagogical tool. The melody is created off of the music, off of the tones, and you know, you hold a note longer for the vowels. If they're longer vowels, if they're short glottal, then it's a stop and a rest, if you're familiar with musical terms. Yeah, gonna teach Frank. And we got to share your video today with the kids because we read A Woman and the Bear. They were very inspiring to our kids. So I just wanted to let you know that.
Oh, goodness, sheesh. Well, the whole thing sounds like a song that beginning Tlingit with me last year, but myself and Scott and Elias came up with a song, and it sort of sounded like it was like Gusuwae, Gusuwae, Tsatsi. And so it sort of reminded me of that. And just using the song as a tool definitely drives it home. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's really interesting because Tlingit music just disregards tone. When you're actually looking at Tlingit songs, it's like just push the sounds into the melody a lot of times. The same with vowel length. And so as you're sort of learning and using the language, like vowel length and tone are really critical. So I think that matching them to song that you compose specifically for teaching this is a really cool idea. I really like what I saw in Hawaii, how they really just took like the ukulele, which is a Portuguese instrument, and they just made it a Hawaiian thing. Like, it's such a Hawaiian thing, I think. And when you go to their schools, like, they could just break out in a song at any time. And the fun part is, like, it's their songs. And so for a lot of language programs, I think it's fine to start with adopting lullabies. We hear so many lullabies when we go into a lot of language programs. And I think that's fine, but I think at some point you've got to develop your own. And so it's going to be fun for us to develop, like, what is that thing that's distinctly ours? Because we have our drumming and we have our songs, and then what's the next thing? I was always surprised that that there was no single instrument that we just sort of appropriated. I mean, there's lots of guitar players and other stuff, but I don't see an instrument and I think, yeah, that's like totally our thing now. The one thing I would recommend is probably looking at font choices, and just, I'm kind of a stickler for that. Like, I think everything should have a look, but be your own person. But if I was in charge, I'd say, here's the font for adults, it's Brill. Here's the font for kids, it's Indica. When it goes through the editorial process, you better switch it to that. So just, I like to have a uniform look, but that's just me. I know not everybody feels the same. There's lots of fun comic book looking fonts out there, and do your thing. But things should be consistent. And it doesn't have to come from one person, but it could come from, as it goes through the stages, like, feel free to have a brainstorming phase. But then if you're making a singular set of curriculum for a program, I think anybody should be able to look at it and say, oh yeah, that comes from them. I could see it. you know, it's sort of like a form line. When you look at somebody's form line, you kind of know whose it is. It's a bit of a branding thing. And it's also a choice because not every font is going to handle your underlines and your other characters the best way. It's good to have consistency. And I think ideally, in our school network of language medium schools, there's people who do stuff and then they kick it over to a design team who sort of polish it up and make it all look really cool. But those are just my thoughts. Great stuff, really fun to hear.
Goodness, geez, thank you all for your feedback. And my apologies, just so you know, I teach after school club every time. So I have to leave a little bit before 3, but love to stay as long as I can.
Yeah, and just An-san will be getting her feedback on your stuff if she has any to me or maybe to you directly, and then I'll maybe just forward it on. But yeah, just so you all know. Go ahead.
And also, just to note that when Ed and I had both said, that's not really a Tlingit song, we meant it in the most supportive way possible.
I wanted to ask, does that pedagogical tool, does it mean like looking at things, like what do you see, and then like talking about objects you see? Is that what it was talking about, or can you share with us what that means, please, or what that tool means?
You mean this lesson?
Yeah, the lesson.
Yeah, it was mentioning what things are like. It is here. So the thread, here is the thread. Here is the thread a little further away from me in the same space. And then awe is there is the tree. And then really far away is ayu, which is why I had like moon and to get ya, like just trying to. So the hope is to have an image, and I'm so grateful to Hone for allowing us to use those images, because we use the same images for our kids, so that if they go into college courses, like those images are consistent for them. And then we try to do sign language on top of it, but I didn't get to that point. I was just like, let's just sing this song with the images. But the kids really respond to using sign language.
How about the word pedagogical tool?
Oh
Could you
yeah,
explain that more?
sure.
Yeah.
Pedagogy is it's the way in which you want to teach something. So I guess I was trying to make a distinction of that this is not a cultural piece of music, that I was trying to write a Tlingit song, but that that there are different ways to try to teach children, and knowing that song and movement and image, like teaching to all of your senses, is a teaching tool. So I would say pedagogy is very much like how you teach. And so, yeah, this was the use of music based on the language is what I'm testing out as a pedagogical tool or teaching tool with the images. Yeah. So I guess I'm asking if you think I should try to do all the chapters that way. That's the biggest thing, is like, should I really spend the time organizing this? Do you think people would use it? So you can be as honest as you'd like. Anyway, okay.
Great. Well, we'll probably get to that part. We do got to move on to the next person presenting, though. That's great. And yeah, and thanks for asking about if you ever have questions about like, what does that mean, and what, in the fictional scenario, we all know each other's languages, but we don't. So it's fine. It's absolutely fine to ask that. Okay, I think Jin Kasei.
Screen share. So when my first year teaching was at Minaho River Elementary School, and I would get from 20 minutes to about a half an hour in each class. And from K through about 3, usually the 4th and 5th graders, it's different. But for the 2nd grade class, the teacher was so welcoming and had me come in and join and teach just anything and anything I wanted. And I found that my lessons were started backwards. So I would go into the classroom, find something that I wanted to teach, and then my lesson was developed backwards from there. So, and I had gone into the second grade class and taught Tlingit language to them, and one of the students had approached me and said that her grandma was Haida and she wanted to say something to her in Haida, and I was like, it's been so long since I had studied Chad Kill, so I had to go and find some words and some phrases, and then I had previously taught the Wasa Iati song, and then I was like, gosh, when I taught them that song, I also challenged them to say it to other students. Like, when you see me, like, this is a conversation starter. It's not just a song. So when you see me in the halls, ask me Wasa Iati and I'll respond to you, because that's a part of the song, the question and answer. So Alfie Price had composed he kind of expanded the Wasa Iati song to include Chadkil and Shmalgiak. And so I thought, oh, cool, that would be a good way to bring all three languages to the classroom. But in doing that, I had to start back. Well, I had to ask them, because I had explained so much about Tlingit language and Tlingit Ani that I had to give back information on it, and had asked them, do you know that there are 3 other nations of people that live in Southeast? So I kind of started, let me explain what you're looking at. This is, it's an incomplete unit plan that I'm working on. It's not quite complete, and that's why I'm presenting it today, is because it's not quite complete. And I kind of framed it to match the Nancy Lanehart's art kits, and in those they get sent out to the classroom, so the teachers can just pick them up and just do the activities in the classroom, and they have all the contents, what's included, and that's what you'll see on the screen here. Let me see if I can scroll slower. What the kit includes, and that has images and maps for the kit, and the description of the kit, which kind of gives it a review of what the students are going to learn, the materials, the vocabulary that's in there, and again, it's incomplete, but it goes over the summary of the Tlingit, the names of the languages, and then what's not also in there is the phrases that the students learn in greeting each other. I state the objectives kind of goes over, the objectives kind of what was required for the teacher aspect. I don't explain any of that part to the students, but what I do engage with the students is it's a prepare. And so that's where I left off before, is explaining to the students about the 3 different nations of Southeast, and we look at a map, and I wonder if I could pull that. Oh, I had explained too that all of Alaska, that there's different languages for over the entire state of Alaska. And then I focus on Southeast Alaska, and I wonder if I have that cursor. I don't see the cursor thing on here. Where's annotate? Is that, nope, never mind. Okay, so I just kind of describe it, show where Southeast is, and I show where the Haida land is, and Tsimshian, and I show how the Tlingit Nation expands into Canada, and as well as the Haida into British Columbia and Metlakatla further down. So it's kind of oops, how do I stop doing this one? Alexa, stop the alarm. Sorry. And then, so it's kind of like a history, like I start off by showing the locations of the nations. And then as I go down, sorry, I'm looking at my paper because I wrote notes, so I wouldn't have to read off my pages. I kind of give it a description of some of the social structure, and I guess this is kind of where I was hoping for feedback, because we have so many Chadkil and Shmalgiak language learners and teachers here. I've got extensive knowledge and information on Tlingit culture, but I don't have a whole lot on Haida or Tsimshian. So I put some of the social structures and how they're matrilineal, and the places that they live, and something unique about each culture. And I always have that map, and the map is included to show that where they live and what's unique about each place. Like when we talk about Haidas are known for their big giant canoes, and we show the bodies of water that they cross and why it was so important. And then we move on to we talk about what's common, where they live. They eat a lot of the same food, or we eat a lot of the same foods. We live in similar environments, but what makes us all unique is the language. And so I talk about how each language is so different. And in doing that, I provide an example of like what the names, how the names of the languages are different. Let's see if I can, are you guys able to see? I use the See Alaska image, the Hashika, Voices of Our Ancestors. Can you guys see that? So I show them that the names of the languages are different, and I go over them with them, and then we practice them. And then I can go back to this. And then we go over on how to say thank you. And I use, let's see, pull this full screen here. I used a website to show how the languages are different. And this is just I say them, I say them, and then I let somebody else use an example of somebody else saying them, and then how the language is different. So hearing one word in 3 different languages. So then, I mean, I could say them, but I like to have another example of somebody else saying them. So then we have these videos in class. So it's much, I don't like standing up and having me talking the whole time, because that can be really boring. So I try to pull in like images or videos. And then I got to start rushing through here. Apologize. So then that was like one of the first activities that I haven't quite finished yet, is getting a blank map of Southeast Alaska, where we have these different nations outlined, so that they can color code, like you find in a map where the Tlingit Ani is. And then they either label it or color code it based on like a legend, the Haida and the Tsimshian land. And so that was just kind of an activity. So students can say, oh yeah, the Tlingits occupy this area, and then Tsimshian and Haida. And then the next activity, I broke it down into 3 because it's supposed to be a unit. So I was producing it for Go Belt Heritage Foundation, but I still haven't finished it. So I go into more detail of the Kwans of Southeast, and it includes more Tlingit language, but and also make connections on how the names, the English names of the areas represent the Tlingit language, like Yakutat, the Yakdot Kwan, and I, say what the name is for each Kwan of the area and how, like what it means. So there's more definition. So they have a more understanding, the people of the fish cache. And then I have an image of what a fish cache is and why they would use it in that area. So let's fast forward through all of that, because that's all in detail for each one. And then let's see, for this, let me go past. So this is where an example of, I have a lot of information about Tlingit Ani, but I don't have a lot of information about Haida Ani or Haida land, apologies, or Tsimshian land. So I was hoping maybe you guys can shoot me a message or directions or point me in the right direction to include more information so that the students have more knowledge of those areas. And then at the very end, we have a reflection where the students look at like what happened, what did we learn, and just having the students speak something rather like so that their voices are heard. I really like to get the students not just to repeat what I say, but like, what did you think about that? Did you know that there were 3 other nations of people that had this language or that use different languages in Southeast? And then kind of just get them speaking. And then the second one is the language use. And I'm sorry, how am I on time? Okay, so I go through and I show just this would be the second time I come into their classroom to talk about this. And there's a lot of repetition. I reintroduce the 3 different languages, the locations, and then I start to talk about how different the languages are. So then I introduced, because they already know Wasa Iati, then I introduced the, and these are all posters that I have created, and Achtu Yake. Then I introduced how to say it in Kill. And then it's just a lot of saying and repetition, Sinudunk, Hidung, and then Deet Login. So they hear it and then they repeat it. But then we do an activity where we circle up and I'll ask a student, Sinudunk, Hidung, and then they respond date login and then turn around and ask their friend. And this could be like a timely process, but it's a question and answer where they get to go throughout the whole circle. So then the students are hearing it over and over again and they get a chance to practice it. And then we all say it together. And then I start to introduce the song, the Sinu Dunk Hey Dunk, and then they say it. And then I say date login, and then they repeat it, and then we sing it all together. So it's language practice, songs, and repetition over and over again. And then I always end each lesson, of course, to say Gunnar Chish for Hatiadi or Gunnar Chish. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being good listeners. And I reinforce how and noon, just so that they hear it over and over again and reinforce that they're learning the 3 different languages. And again, I guess the most important thing is when I'm done is to challenge them. Like when you leave this classroom, to make sure you use it. When you see me in the hallway, the students aren't supposed to speak, but ask me, and I'll say, login, like, and the teachers are okay with it. They always shush the students when they're walking in the halls, but when they're speaking a different language, the teachers are just happy with it. So the ones that I've worked with in particular, anyway. So I'm just gonna wrap that up.
Feedback from our colleagues.
I'll just voice mine. I put mine in chat, but I was just my idea on this is I love that it is included in all 3, even if you didn't have them, you didn't feel you had all the information. I love that you still included all 3. I think that's really awesome. And then I just wanted to add one idea. You said you were looking for more things. I just think it's a really cool point that Hudkill is an isolate language, and many people have joined the Hudkill learning path just because of that fact that it is an isolate, and to them it was a challenge. And for that fact alone, they wanted to learn it. So I kind of like to throw that out there and see if that inspires people as a challenge also. That's mine.
Sheesh, maybe you could catch me sometime and explain more what isolate languages. I wish I wrote it down, but I don't know.
No known relatives.
Yeah.
So
No relatives.
I think it is related to all the Dene languages. So Navajo, Apache, all the interior, what some people call Athabascan languages. Like those are all linguistic relatives. Tsimshian is related to Nishka and Gitkasan, although collectively, I don't know if they're related to their languages. But then Haida is not known. Nobody knows. It's we all came out of clamshell. There we are. So
yeah, technically, Samalgak, Niska, and Gitkan fall under the Samalgak family, which is an isolate as well.
Yeah, with again, so no known relatives. So then if that pocket of languages, something happens, it's very hard to reconstruct. If something happens in Haida's, there's no speakers left, it's very hard to reconstruct. Where there are other languages that have been lost, but then they reconstructed it by working with a neighboring language. And so sometimes, and some of the languages are close enough. Like I think Atna people can almost just speak with Dene'ina people or Dena'ina people. And I've heard Halakachuk and I want to say Degenag, maybe I might have that one wrong, but there's somewhere like they can almost converse with each other. Yupik and Inupiaq shares lots of things, but yeah, that's a nice one. Other thoughts, folks?
I would like to point out that Hudkill is a language isolate, but other tribes like the Tlingit have, affected our language. And our elders knew that the Athabascan had an impact on our language as well. And when I uploaded to GEDmatch and I ran a certain DNA scenario, Athabascan popped up 33 times. So for me, that was a confirmation.
How? Anyone else?
I was just going to say that I really appreciated how you added all three together. The only thing that I would add is that we do have, since we're such close relatives, that we do have a lot of shared words together, even though two of them are isolate. But yeah, I thought that was beautiful work.
Yeah, that'd be really fun to
Sorry.
explore some of the shared words. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I was just gonna
skipped
say.
over it.
Oh.
But there's a link in there. I apologize. I took too long and I skipped over it, but I clicked the link for that Alaska has a whole list, and they say them all in Tlingit, Chadkil, and Schmalgiak, and like douche, deuce, and do. Oh shoot, I forgot the Schmalgiak version. But there's a whole list. There's a link in there. I apologize, but yeah, I thought that was really cool too. And then the next part was emphasizing the difference in the languages. I think that's when I introduced the different ways of saying Kunashchish. Oops.
And this might be in the future too, but our grammar is all completely different. And a lot of people that travel here, or some students may not even know that, like Shemalia, our verb comes first, and then Hadkil, I think it comes last. So yeah.
Hukyunsk.
Yeah, like
I was just putting it in the chat, but I was gonna say the shared words could be its own lesson if it was a continuing ongoing thing, if it were a repeated ongoing thing. Shared words could be a great one. Happy to help if you need any information that we have access to for Simchiam stuff, but also too kind of it's okay for emphasis to be on the emphasis of information to be on the Tlingit stuff too, as inclusive as it is. If you're on the Tlingit land, it just kind of makes sense as well. So don't feel bad about that too. The balance kind of makes sense in its way.
Okay, fabulous. Yeah, it was great information. I like that we should always be inclusive. I was in Hawaii, and one of the first times I visited their medium school, I sat in a classroom where they were teaching children Japanese through Hawaiian. And I didn't know Japanese or Hawaiian. I learned a bit of Hawaiian after that, but at that point I didn't know any Hawaiian. So I just sat in that classroom thinking, I have no idea what's really going on, but this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And so I've always thought in the future, when we build our schools, I think we should privilege each other's languages even over English, so that kids, a trilingual sort of region would be just incredible and would really just be amazing. So that then if you had an immersion school that was a Tlingit school, you could have a Samalgach and a Hatkil teacher who were employed there. And same with, it could go the other way as well. And so I think that's fabulous. In future, you might try to get to the language part a little faster when you're presenting. Like the culture, it's good to see that part, but I do want us to focus on the language teaching a little bit more. I'm happy that the cultural component is being taught, but I also want to be aware that the language and culture are totally tied together, but it's always kind of easier to teach the culture than it is the language right now, because, so if we could just push forward through that a little bit faster, that'd be great. Okay, sheesh, great work, everybody. Y'all are fantastic. Let's see. I'm gonna try and find a little timer. But I know that time is not always our ally, but the reality is we will make sure everybody has a chance to go. And we're just feeling it out too. If we got to move stuff around, the next set of curriculum presentations, we could make them a little longer. We'll see. Everybody has a voice. You all have a vote. I'm just one person who I got some ideas, but we can be flexible.
Sheesh. So mine, it doesn't have a whole. It doesn't have any of the Tlingit in there yet. I kind of had to spend a lot of time putting it together, and I'm going to add the Tlingit to it, so it might be like a D, a C or a D. But I'll just jump right into it here. So this is a lesson that's kind of like an expansion on what I've been working on before. You've probably seen it, working on a model Yauk. And for now, it's just one style, a Chayash. So this is a Chayash Chak, or a skeleton of a Chayash, which is used by Tlingit, Iek, Sukpiek, all in open water. And so the overview of this, develops a scale model mold for building, and this is for middle school to college level classes. The model that they make should have been 1.5 inches, which equals 1 foot on a scale measurement, which is pretty standard for all boat making. Almost all over the, at least where they use inches anyway. It's pretty standard, it's 1.5 inches to 1 foot. And all models of Tlingit dugouts, all the different styles that there are, there's no blueprints really. There's some in just very few books and the artists that have made them. So building a skeleton like what I'm going to kind of go through here in a few minutes, it's just not there. But making it more affordable, that's the goal of this, or the purpose is, we can see here, the goal of the student will learn to gather data from an existing model and create lofting plans for a Tlingit style strip yauk. And this will give them the knowledge to create more different styles if they wish, of strip canoes, and something that'll be more affordable project on their own. Really, these can take you a week, they can take you a month or a year to build a full-size strip canoe. It really just depends on how much time you have to sit down and just do it, or work on it in your shop or your shed. But creating a strip model will give them all the information they need to create a traditional full-size. Like I was saying, there's no real plans anywhere, but through this process of just making a model, it would, as I said, have a dugout of your own. It wouldn't be a dugout, but it would be a strip style, and it would put that cost range anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000, depending on what you have to spend on tools. If they could use tools from a school, it would bring that price way down, as opposed to a dugout, a full-size dugout. It's going to range you $100,000 to $150,000, and a lot of time. So this is just kind of another way of making it more affordable and building that knowledge, so they can just make a model to scale and create their own. And really, you will only need 20 or 30 feet to make something like this. So there's resources that I put in here. These ones have measurements of Tlingit dugouts from long ago. The Tlingit Indians has a bunch of different measurements, and through Spanish eyes, the canoe, and Canoe Craft has, for building a strip yauk or a strip boat, this has everything you need in there. It's Canoe Craft, tools, material, how to do everything. It's all set out in stone for you for $20. But having those measurements, though, from these 3 books is pretty vital. I mean, and really, the top 2 have ones that are vessels that nobody makes. So they're the few strip canoes that are out there now. Wayne Price has one. The Han down in Washington has one, and maybe one more person has one, but they're all the same style that is pretty much just known as Tlingit or Haida or Northern style canoe. So this is more for a class so it can expand how many different yauk or canoes that we see on the water. And for the class, I have all the materials that they would need, all the tools that they'll need. So they could take this and this is what they need at home, bring it home, do the same thing, and build their knowledge from there. And then as I get the Tlingit added into this, you know, I can have all that here. So it's more, they have a how-to in Tlingit almost for class or something they could just take home with them. And even all the step-by-steps, you know, this is starting at the center line, getting all our lofting plans, and our lofting plans are, like I was saying, 1.5 inches. And we can see here, 1.5 inches marks. So when students build this boat, they're gonna have to have those on there, and they have their center line, have their 1.5 inch marks, both on the keel and the gunnel wall, and then they could line them up and start measuring out or getting their stations made, at least the outlines for their stations. And so this whole process is just going to kind of walk you through how to take those measurements and build your own. You know, and tracing those is kind of tricky, but having that kind of know-how to do it is something I don't want to kind of miss out on, and it's not really there for anybody, you know, that's already made, and there's definitely nothing in Tlingit about this. So that's kind of what I wanted to get to. And now having all these stations, you know, I cut them out. Students can totally cut these out. This is really small, 1/8 inch thick wood. And you cut it out with a little handsaw or a little bandsaw, putting it together, just like a craft for a class. It probably even, I don't know, I think middle school is probably as low as it could go with making this, if a class were to have it cut out already. You know, and then building a strong back. This is just one style of a strong back. There's some way better ones, but even having that know-how just to build it, and then assemble it after, which this would go through, having all your stations marked out, having the chak, or I believe it's chak. I've seen a few different phrases for skeleton, and I think that's pretty much what this is, because it's a skeleton of a boat. But I've seen chagi and chak and chagu. But I like the supermodel better. Maybe we'll change it to that one. But yeah, it's all really small stuff. I mean, everything, the power tools are small, material small. So, you know, I've had middle school classes using big ship adze and big tools, and none of them got hurt. So this would be way easy and attainable, and with the Tlingit language that I can take from the other lessons I was putting together and kind of add in here and then build it up. Hoping to have something like this, so it's for classes like, I know Gold Belt Heritage, they're not big on letting their students use adzes or a lot of big tools. So this would be something their students could do with minimal dangerous tools, I guess you would say. And then even building the strips, this is a little tiny 1/8 inch by 1/8 inch strip. And really you're just gluing it all up and putting it together and sanding it down, and then you have yourself. And then so when you're done with this, the skeleton here, this is built to scale. So you just translate all this to feet, from 1.5 inches to a foot, and cut it out on big plywood, build everything to full size. And as I was saying before, you could build your own. This is a 16'9" scale for probably around $5,000, rather than paying someone $100,000+ to make you one. And you wouldn't lose anything in performance on this style, so you could still tackle icy waters, open waters, for a fraction of the cost.
Okay. Reactions, responses?
This is such a cool project, and you're obviously so passionate about it. And what I like is that you've used, each slide has more pictures and just 1 or 2 simple sentences, which I think will help in your process of translation to teach through the Tlingit language. And it's like you brought it up earlier when we were starting to collaborate on the translation. I think it's like, as you said, just 1 sentence at a time. And another idea I thought might be cool to add for the language learning component is maybe like a list of vocabulary terms at the beginning of the unit. And then your students could like review the terms so that when they start flipping through the slides, they can kind of have something to reference back to. But I think it's super dope, and I'm excited to see it come into our schools.
I have to agree with everything that was just said, 100%. It's always delightful to see someone who's passionate about their project, and more importantly, about teaching it to someone else. And I think this is an effective method. The whole thing got me thinking about like when you're putting together an IKEA bookshelf or something, or like, I'm not rich enough for IKEA. Maybe like a Fred Meyer bookshelf that'll break when I put my books on it. It's like particle board, but in it has like all the letters. It's like A, B, and you put all the A's and put A. I was like, you could put like the Tlingit alphabet, be like underline X, connect that to the other underline X. I don't know, but good job, very very good.
Win a couple of national awards as a playwright, and you're getting that IKEA money. Wow.
At least make everyone think I am. They're like, that's Fred Meyer. No, that's the one I found.
Plus our stimulus checks, gee.
Oh yeah, there you go. You got the 2000 coming. But well, we already paid you 600, and if you count, anyways. Back to what you're doing. I got a couple of thoughts. I want to share some things with you as we continue to share things that we're trying to make and stuff. Let's just let's say what it is, and let's put it up there, and let's just kind of get into it. And so I know sometimes we're gonna feel the deficient, right? Like, oh, I didn't have enough time to do this the way I wanted to. I don't have the vocabulary to do what I wanted to. And I'm gonna tell you, it's like, here's a moment of honesty: is we're collectively trying to do something that's nearly impossible. Sometimes when I think about it, I'm like, okay, what we're trying to do is go in the icy waters and walk deep enough to where the halibut live. Like that's really what I feel like we're trying to do, and we're up against it. But that's okay, because nothing has to be. Even though I gave you some scenarios, I'm like, oh, you're gonna go teach us tomorrow. Okay, let's back off of that a little bit. Share an idea, and then let's collaborate. And a lot of these things, like what's really neat is about the future we're constructing, is all the people in Southeast Alaska made similar types of canoes. So then once we get the idea and we start getting it to a point where like, this thing is ready now to start adding all the language in there. And then we could say, oh yeah, let's make a Haida version. Let's make a Tsimshian version, so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We build a wheel. Everything we do is a tricycle or a big wheel, whatever you want to think. We make big wheels. We don't have to reinvent it. We just make 3 big wheels all at the same time. But then I also want to talk about this concept of domains and registers. And this is what we're going to encounter. So the domain is where you want to take the language, right? So like, one is we want to revitalize canoe making, and we also want to be able to make canoes in the language. So then that's a doubly daunting task, and that's not to say it can't be done. But then you're going to have to develop something that's probably mostly in English, and then work on translating that over. And then you're also going to have to teach everybody the vocabulary. So for example, how do we measure things in our languages, and how do we talk about like the different ways of cutting things and chopping things and scooping things? And so part of it is going to be sort of, we're developing curriculum, but we're also sometimes going to take the language back into this whole area that it's been removed from. And that's a huge task. It's something that should be applauded. And keep up the great work, everybody. And don't feel, I just want us to feel comfortable. I also feel confident, and also able to just share stuff. As to your thing, it's fabulous, because yeah, dugout canoes are well over 100 grand these days. And I think if we could scratch up the money, there's not very many artists who can make them, so let's figure out how to make them. But in the meantime, these strip canoes are a wonderful opportunity, so that the school could have one, and then we don't have to worry about the kids ruining the dugout or anything like that, you know, because dugouts also take a tremendous amount of maintenance. And there's a whole other language lesson is how to take care of the boat, you know. And so really exciting, really fun stuff. And I'm hoping one idea leads to another idea, leads to another idea. However, you know, not always the best at practicing this. We have to finish the thing before we go to the next thing. And so we're also going to work on in this class is getting stuff out the door, which is something anybody who's done stuff creatively or even technically, sometimes getting stuff out the door is the hardest part. I had to find this. There was a movie by Dempsey Bob, and I thought he did such a great job of talking about, like, he's like, they're like my children, but at some point I got to kind of get them out into the world, you know. And so with us, when we develop curriculum, I think that it's always in a state of you get an idea, you develop the idea, you put it into a thing that you're going to use to teach, you use the thing to teach, you assess it, you revise it, and you're constantly in the state of that. But then making sure that you've got a good process for yourself of getting stuff out there and ready, which is collaborative, you know, because you might have this kind of knowledge and someone else has this kind of knowledge. So just sharing some thoughts with y'all. Any other?
Can I share something too? This is Sonny. I'm all excited. I feel like Raven before he could swim, you know, just lifting up this cover and saying, yeah, I'm going to learn all this. It's exciting. But I pulled up some information about some tools and what they were called during Tlingit from Shotridge. And then, of course, I have as a boat builder for, geez, all my life. You know, I can come up with the English words and I wish I could do more, but just offering and putting it out there and letting you know I'm excited is good. That's it.
Yay. And yeah, hopefully, you know, we're all kind of a cohort too. So if we end up sort of wanting to collaborate on some ideas and so like, let's say we go to the next round of things, maybe we'll work in groups and sort of pick a few of these ideas and take them to completion. And, you know, it's what we want to do and what we feel is most effective for us. So, okay. Anything else?
I'm super excited to see how this project progresses and can't wait to see them out on the water. That's all.
Yeah, I feel the same. I was definitely like, I love like the picture step by step. That's helpful for me, especially since I'm not a carver in any way. But I was like picturing, you know, there's wood shop in high school, you know, and they use those things like, oh, like he better check in with me, figure out how to say Tlingit. I'm gonna adds away. Like I can just visualize and hear the language through your presentation. So I really enjoyed it. Gonna teach.
I can tell you that you can say which is don't add yourself. Someone posted a picture of someone, they hit their boots and they didn't hurt themselves, but they took a layer off their boot as Yeshitzin and his crew over in Sitka working on a dugout. So
Twice in 2 years he did that.
Adds himself.
Yeah, same foot.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You should get like double layer steel toed just for that foot.
Yeah, this so this and the other it's a big slideshow, you know. I want to share it because I think the only way to really ever see it ever completed is just with working with everybody. I mean, I put a lot of time into it, but really it's not going to get done unless like a lot of other people helping them. That's awesome because I want to see them on the water more than just seeing, you know, my name on it. I don't care about that. I want to see them on the water, and I want to make them.
Yeah.
I want to teach how to make them, even if it's in English, like you said.
And back, there were also several different types of paddles. I mean, and as we think of this stuff, there's, in terms of how to sort of scaffold your curriculum, there's a couple different things that we can think about as a long range goal. Like even like let's say we took this idea and say, okay, what are we going to teach them in high school? What are we going to teach them in middle school? What are we going to teach them in elementary school? What are we going to teach them in preschool? So that by time when they're in high school, none of this is a new idea. We're just building on to these ideas. And these are some things to think about, whatever the concept is, both in terms of the technical knowledge, the cultural knowledge, and then the language knowledge. And just sort of like, how do we build upon those? And then also, once we teach them this, what comes after? So then maybe there's paddles, because there were war paddles, there were long distance paddles, there were river paddles, there were hunting paddles that my uncle was telling me about, that they were flat on one side of it, so the water went off of it in a pretty quiet way. So what's also interesting is sort of going through and collecting the cultural knowledge, which sometimes you go to culture bearers and people who know and canoe makers, and sometimes you can go into these books that were written 50, 100 years ago. Then we're going to take all that stuff and now translate it. And it's really interesting because sometimes you're going to take the language into this place where it hasn't been in a long time. But I'll share another thing that the folks in Hawaii shared with me. They said sometimes you might have an idea, like, for example, let's say we're going to take the potlatch and we're going to convert that thing to a full immersion environment. You might get a lot of pushback on that. And there might be some people who are in charge of the cultural components now who don't speak the language and who are going to shut you down. So maybe what you do is you find some ceremony that we don't do anymore and you reconstruct it using the language. And sometimes you're going to have to, and they said in Hawaii, they had to just take a educated guess on how the people used to do those things. But they brought it back and they said, well, nobody could tell us we're wrong. It's not like we're just making it up. We speak Hawaiian, we know Hawaiian culture, we know we used to do this. So we're bringing it back and we're talking to our ancestors and we're hoping we're doing it right. But just keep that in mind as you go forward. There's always going to be a bit of negotiations as well with your whole population of speakers and everything, because not everybody thinks like they used to, like, you know, and that's a complicated thing. Some of it could be influences from other modes of thoughts, Christianity, and that could create some conflict with some of the beliefs of long ago, and finding the sort of the middle ground between that. But then also just like, oh yeah, we're not, you know, killing slaves anymore. So, you know, that scrub that from the vocabulary, but just sort of just more and more stuff to think about. A comprehensive set of curriculum is really big. It's interconnected. And one of the big challenges is how do you make sure everybody who's making stuff is on the same page? That doesn't mean you all agree exactly how everything should be made, but like once the complete guidebook on how to make a canoe is done in Tlingit, somebody else shouldn't be starting that because they don't know it exists. And that's a lot of collaboration and communication that sometimes doesn't always exist, but it's up to us to make sure that it does. Okay, so we got 20 minutes left, so I'm going to suggest one person will just sort of slide over to next week. Whoever, if anybody wants to volunteer, you get 1,000 air miles. I'm just kidding. But if anybody wants to just jump to next week, I could give it to fictional airlines. Let's write on a piece of paper. We call it Yandakin Airlines. And then if I look at the list of folks, and I know there's, I'll make sure to take some time this weekend to count them up. And if I don't see your name on this list, I might be coming after you just to make sure you're signed up. So I have, for next Wednesday, we have 2 signed up. So we'll slide one over from this week. And who wants to go next? And who wants to?
Are the 2 signed up for next week? Is that for me and Kogiktu, Lauren, or no?
No, you and Sid Audegon.
Oh, okay. I'll go ahead and go. I'm ready.
Oh wait, no. I've got 2 that are supposed to go this week that are already signed up, and I'm asking one to switch to next week.
Oh, I'm signed up for next week then?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought I was going today. My bad.
It's okay. It's okay. It is the 27th. So I'll show you. This is what I see when I look at the thing. Let's see, where is it at? There. So this is what I see, folks. So here is today, here's next week, the week after, the week after, the week after. And that should be enough for everybody. But if you don't see your name on there for some reason, you might want to make sure your name gets on that list. Let me put the link into the chat just in case you haven't seen it yet for some reason.
I'm ready to go today, but I could wait till next week if Yaktashi wants to go.
How do you folks want to solve it?
I'm ready today as well, but also willing to go next week if whatever your preference.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Just typing rock, paper, scissors.
That's gee, camera. I win. No.
Oh yeah, there you go. Okay, Yaktashi, you're next. So you get a pick. You pick. Make a decision.
I will go next week.
Okay, there you go.
Quinny, are you still trying to show your screen or should I start?
Go ahead.
Okay. Okay guys, so what I wanted to run by you today are Tlingit drills. And this is intended for college level adult learners. My inspiration for wanting to do drills is from my experience in learning the Japanese language at Middlebury language schools. And basically twice a week outside of lecture, we would be required to attend 2 drill sessions, which lasted about 2 hours each. And they would build an intensity. So they'd start out kind of simple and then build up the heat till you were on the spot answering questions in Japanese and it just became second nature. We would probably keep it a little bit simpler because most people who are learning our languages are balancing a full plate of work, school, and other obligations. But the purpose of the drills is to bridge the gap between what we know and what we use to help learners stay in the language. So if somebody asks you in Tlingit, "Wasa yeti," how are you? You might have this train of thought that goes, "Oh, he's asking how I am. I know some response, I've seen him before, but I'm just gonna stay in English because it's more comfortable for me." So your instinct might be, "Oh, I'm fine," or "I had a busy day." And similar to basketball, if someone throws a ball at you, you know, what's your response? You might put your hands up to catch, or if you're like me, you might duck and scream because maybe you grew up with siblings who threw things at each other maliciously like we did. But after taking some drills in middle school and high school, I reprogrammed my brain to put my hands up and catch the ball. And then I was a force to be reckoned with. An example of the communication failure many of us can relate to as adult learners is illustrated in this comical clip of an SNL skit in which Chris Farley is part of a Japanese game show. And I'll just play it for you.
Yato, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Kara Rari Temperatin. Sankambanwa.
I'm sorry, I don't speak Japanese.
Rari-san, hi, choto hanashao.
I don't understand. There's been a little mistake.
Anyway, that's just something I think many of us can relate to when you're in an immersive environment and you accidentally revert back to English. So to help overcome that, my idea is to do drills, and an assessment of whether or not it's successful is following the drill, do learners respond to the prompt in Tlingit? So the example I put together today is about Wasa siati. And that means how are you in Tlingit. And this drill is designed to supplement chapter 7 of the Beginning Tlingit workbook, which is why this drill is aimed at college student adults who are specifically enrolled at University of Alaska Southeast, because it supplements the materials we use. So as I've said, the drills start easy and build in intensity. So step 1 is to review the vocabulary terms of chapter 7. And this is something you would read together. You could take turns with your drill session group until everybody is pretty familiar with these terms. The actual Beginning Tlingit workbook has each of these verbs conjugated for every single person. For example, I'm okay, you're okay, they're okay. But for the purpose of this drill, we're keeping it in the first person so that obviously when someone asks you wasa iati, you answer with I'm okay, or I'm tired, I'm smelly. Except for ha litzin, I kept that in the we are strong form because it seemed more natural and more conversational rather than saying I'm strong. So then you pick 4 terms to drill because the idea of the drill is that it's repetitive and you're able to commit it to memory. So step 2, a little bit harder, is to practice the terms, and you have an image here and folks in the drill can guess, but then you give them the answer. This one is helwa sachat uti. Show another image, ha litzin. Show another image, chat yanig. And show the 4th and final image, chat sewaat. Step 3 is the most intense, and now you're going to call on people in the group and you'll ask them wasa iati and address them by name, and then they see the image and they respond with the Tlingit phrase hetwasa khat uti. And so this is where it starts to get a little bit more intense, but it's kind of fun because you get there as a group together. And then you just run through all these images in random order, and you start to go faster and faster as you can tell that the learners are more comfortable. So then they would respond, ha shitzin, chat yanig, chat sewaat, heshwasa chat uti, ha shitzin, chat yanig, chat sewaat, and so on until you've done it so many times that by the end of the drill, those 4 terms should be committed to memory, and it should be instinctive and second nature for people to respond to the question, wasa iati, with one of the 4 terms that they've learned so far. And that's my idea. I'm open to feedback and suggestions.
Okay. Feedback.
Okay. I like the use of emojis for like, oh, I'm really cold, because sometimes if you use the like I've had times where they have a picture of like a winter landscape and that's the picture for cold, and I think it's like the word for valley or something. So that was just really like, oh yeah, that has to be really cold or something.
Yeah, it's an awesome idea. Just practicing it over and over again, especially with the visuals there. I know sometimes the easy praise, like my daughter asked me something, I'm like, I don't know. But it helped build that memory. That's pretty cool. I like it.
Yeah, I think it's like,
I really like the repetition, just repeating, hearing it from your classmates, and it's your turn. Okay, now my turn to respond. So I really like that pattern, and hearing the language and then taking that turn to speak the language just really helps that memorization.
Yeah, I really like how like it started going faster and faster, just kind of keeping that interest level there, and just that excitement of okay. I think that's definitely something that I'm gonna try to incorporate later. So thank you. Good job.
Great way of doing immersion. So I really liked your presentation, how
Yay. Well, I'll show you folks a early version of a emotions poster. Those are all different emotions, but it was all just like the straight face sort of thing. But that was just like a joke that I made years ago. But also just to continue to be silly. The one thing that you can do, and I like this idea of both repetition and increasing speed, and using a little bit of sort of kind of some soft peer pressure, just to sort of say, okay, now what is it? What is it? What is it? Because then sometimes just sort of changing the routine. And this is what I think, I hope my students, the students that I work with, develop, because I'll usually just like, here's this thing, here's that thing, here's this thing, here's that, but that they would go and sort of develop things like this as a cohort to sort of teach it to each other, which isn't, you know, you could argue maybe that's laziness on my part, but the school had taken sort of this other thing. So I developed this more serious emotions thing where I tried to figure out what emojis would tie to which particular emotion and how we could sort of use that. And then we had this neat idea of making these little cards and doing a bunch of stuff. And then eventually just you slide the English out of there. And then now you're just dealing with image to word, which I really like, because whenever we introduce English, then we're going to start thinking in English about this space in between the languages, right? And we're always trying to push folks over all the way into the other language, which is really interesting. I've got lots of thoughts and theories I'll share with you folks throughout the semester and beyond on how do you get people just to fully go. But I was making a video, they asked if I'd make a video to demonstrate how to play some card games. And so I was showing them memory, and I was flipping things over and I was getting them totally wrong. And then I didn't know until after I'd made the whole video. And so I fixed it in post by just making subtitles, making fun of myself for getting it wrong, which I was told that wasn't very professional, but sometimes I want to be more funny than professional. I don't know if that's always a good thing, but just doing stuff too that's fun, and that creating games out of things is really helpful. And you're going to have different students who have different intentions, because I remember I introduced this one set of cards to sort of introduce handling verbs. So similar to how Smelgich counts things differently depending on what they are, Tlingit, you talk about carrying things, handing them, moving them places, depending on what they are. So we showed that to students, and then a lot of them thought, how do I win? I want to win, you know? So the other things is like, can you make competitive games out of it? But then what do you do about folks who are maybe continuous? Everybody learns at a different pace. So if it's always a competitive nature thing, then some people are going to feel a little left out. And this is always something as language teachers that you're going to have to think about, is how do you move the whole group? Because you're also going to have students who feel bad if they ask questions all the time. But I think I always try to encourage that, because it's so, ask the questions. Maybe someone else is thinking of it and they're kind of shy about asking it, or maybe they're going to think of it later. So great job. Yeah, it's great. And it's great to see what's working in other languages and how we can incorporate those things in. Okay, sheesh.
You know, I was just thinking what might be a cool addition to that too is like acting it out, like you know, starting it off where you see the emojis, and then later on, like the next advanced step would be like, you know, you act it out and someone's got to figure out what is it, or unique, you know, you're sick, you're cold.
Okay, I like that idea.
One of the things that I wanted to add, I know you said it was for adults, but when I worked for high school, like when you're teaching language to high school, they're at that age where like you get to the third part, when they're put on the spot and they didn't want to go. I divided them into teams, so it was competitive, and we probably can't do it now with COVID, but we had a bell. So the first person who rang the bell, they got the point. And so because they were in a group, nobody was shy, and they started getting really competitive, like, he didn't say that right, or so they would challenge it, where one person, we had to have a judge because because they were so competitive. But that was just one idea I had for high school. And then if they did it individually, we had like a Wheel of Fortune wheel, where that's how we got the next player. So the last person would spin the wheel, and then whoever's name came up, they were next. So that worked with high school kids. But I thought that was a really awesome idea. So legal and direction.
Direction, thank you.
Wonderful presentations, everybody who went today. Thank you for sharing your work and putting yourself out there. And thanks to everybody who provided feedback. If you didn't provide feedback, think about how you can. It's just nice to hear each other's voices. I know we're pressed for time. I know that there's a number of other things that can sometimes impact whether we talk or not. Can somebody tell me, where can I find the readings that we're gonna look at next week? Anybody know?
His empty folder last time I looked.
In the right
In the Google Drive.
You're not here to criticize me. So, we're gonna read 3 chapters over the weekend. It's gonna be 5 chapters. Keep it up. I'm just kidding. 3 chapters next week from this book called Language, Curriculum, Design, and Socialization. If you like the book, as a member of, as a student of UAS, you can read this entire book through the Egan Library. So there's lots of books that, there's more and more books that the Egan Library has been getting the entire PDF version of. So you can just read it without ever leaving wherever you're at, you know, and some people like to have the physical book. So the other thing that we're talking about is getting a library to the Hayukatangi Dei scholars, and also getting a sort of a core recommended set of texts for folks who are interested in language revitalization. We want to sort of share with folks, like, here's the 20 books you should have on your shelf or in your collection. But we're going to read chapters 2, 3, and 4. It looks like about 42 pages of reading by my count. And so just keep that in mind. Change and renewal in curriculum design, learning the language of social practices, and curriculum design. So then we'll talk about this stuff on Monday. Please make sure you have read it before class starts on Monday. Be ready to talk about it. We'll bring up a few things from the last set of readings as well, so we can transition from those into these. And then we're just going to have a conversation as language learners, teachers, curriculum designers. And then we're also, the conversations are going to be a lot about developing and implementing, assessing, and revising materials, but then also about the methodologies you use to teach. That's what we call the pedagogy. Whatever your pedagogy, it's sort of like your philosophies on teaching and making stuff and updating it. And yeah, so this is fun. Enjoy sharing time with you folks. I'm really grateful for you all and the work that you do and the commitments that you all show. Stick with it, hang in there. See you folks, have a great weekend. Enjoy the sunshine if it's sunshining, and that's what you enjoy.
Oh, how's the lunch? The lunch can go.
How are
Wish you got to steam.
you?
I was trying to make that meme of the Breakfast Club.
Next time.
Yeah, we'll work on that.
I'll have to do a meme workshop. Okay. Cheese.